All right, we have Lamentations chapter 4 to talk about today. This poem of Jeremiah is more about the state of the wickedness of the people, basically. Like, how bad has it gotten in Jerusalem and in Zion, basically. How wicked have they gotten? So that's what we're going to learn a little bit more about in this one. So verse 1, how is the gold become dim? How is the most fine gold changed? The stones of the sanctuary are poured out in the top of every street. The precious sons of Zion, comparable to fine gold, how are they esteemed as earthen pitchers, the work of the hands of the potter? So if you think about this, this is like the idea of they went from being wealthy to being poor. They're not dealing with gems and jewelry anymore. They're dealing with just earthenware, basic, simple, cheap stuff. Their value has gone, basically. Verse 3, even the sea monsters draw out the breast. They give suck to their young ones. The daughter of my people is become cruel, like the ostriches in the wilderness. So this is kind of an interesting idea, thinking that even this sea monster, back then they used to believe when you get into the deep waters like the Mediterranean, they're sea monsters. And they come to destroy your boats if you're out there at night or things like that. That's where the legend of the Kraken and those kinds of ideas would come from in the Mediterranean and other deep oceans, as well as like if you get too far out of shore in the ocean, you die or you fall off the face of the earth. So because they couldn't see, they didn't understand the idea of a curved earth. To them, it looked flat, and then it just disappeared at the horizon. But when they started realizing, no, the earth is actually curved, then they started thinking different. But what they're saying is even the sea monster takes care of her babies, but Jerusalem, the daughter of my people, isn't. The king's not taking care of the people. The king is enacting laws and allowing crime and destruction to happen. The priests religiously aren't encouraging the people to repent. Sin and debauchery is happening. They are cruel. Verse 4, the tongue of the sucking child cleaveth to the roof of his mouth for thirst. The young children ask bread, and no man breaketh it unto them. So this is giving an idea of the abject problems they had. People were dying in the streets. People were starving to death. And others wouldn't help them. Those who had wouldn't give to those who didn't have. It was every man for himself. I'm going to take care of mine and not worry what happens to you. That's the mentality of the people, the challenge they're facing, the destruction that was going on as well. Verse 5, they that did feed delicately are desolate in the streets. They that were brought up in the scarlet embrace dunghills. For the punishment of the iniquity of the daughter of my people is greater than the punishment of the sin of Sodom, that was overthrown as in a moment, and no hands stayed on her. Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed basically really quick. If you go watch the videos of Sodom and Gomorrah in book of Genesis, we talk about the asteroid and the destruction. It just hit and wiped them out quick. No warning, like nothing. It just happened. So Jerusalem, unfortunately, is not going that direction. It's not like suddenly, oh my gosh, this is done. Like Jerusalem was sieged for over 18 months. The people starved to death, turned to cannibalism, just destruction. Total selfishness and wickedness of the people. It was bad. So they went through a much longer death than Sodom and Gomorrah. Verse 7, her Nazarites were purer than snow. They were whiter than milk. They were more ruddy in body than rubies. Their polishing was of sapphire. Their visage is blacker than a coal. They are not known in the streets. Their skin cleaveth to their bones. It is withered. It is become like a stick. If you've ever seen like a person who is starving to death, sometimes you see those from like the third world nations in Africa and other places. That's what you can see there. They're in a bad spot. They're more ruddy in body than rubies. So you think a ruby that's been carved has little bumps over it. They're ruddy. Their bones are sticking out. You can see their collarbones. You can see their ribs. You can see their skeletal structure through their skin because there's no fat. Their body has consumed through their extra stores and is now starting to cannibalize its own internal organs for energy, which eventually kills you, basically. Verse 9, they that be slain with the sword are better than they that be slain with hunger. That's the reality of it. You either get stabbed and killed pretty quickly by the sword, which is probably painful but over fast, or you slowly die from hunger. For these pine away, stricken through for the want of the fruits of the field. The hands of the pitiful women have sodden their own children, meaning sodden means boiled. Women are boiling their own kids for food. They were their meat in the destruction of the daughter of my people. How bad do the conditions have to be when a woman is willing to boil their own child to eat the meat off the child, basically? They've killed their child, now they're boiling them to cook them so they can eat them. That's bad. I mean, that's a pretty, I don't know what you think about that, but you got to be pretty darn hungry to think that way. 11, verse 11, the Lord hath accomplished his fury. He hath poured out his fierce anger and hath kindled a fire in Zion. It hath devoured the foundations thereof. The kings of the earth and all the inhabitants of the world would not have believed that the adversary and the enemy should have entered into the gates of Jerusalem. So this is interesting. This is kind of this idea like nobody believed Babylon was ever going to break those walls and get in. Assyria never got in before, not because they didn't try to break the walls down, because God destroyed 180,000 of the troops. But they thought Babylon can't get in. The Philistines have tried to get in. Other nations have tried to get in. No one has been able to get in. So Babylon's probably not going to get in either. And that didn't work out. They got in. Verse 13, for the sins of her prophets, remember those are the false prophets, and the iniquities of her priests, the priests that were supposed to call the people to repentance and weren't, that have shed the blood of the just in the midst of her. So this means, verse 13 means basically, the laws and the culture allowed the just to be punished. So the people who were following truth and right were destroyed so that the wicked could prosper at their expense. The laws were fixed, so the wicked who could pay off the judges, who could pay off the priests, were gaining the victories. They were, we need this person's land. We're going to find a reason to put that person in jail and kill him, and I'll take his land so I don't have to pay him for it. That's the kind of stuff. They're passing these laws so that the wealthy get wealthier and the poor die and get worse. Basically, the laws are rigged against the people on the bottom. The government is corrupt. The politicians, the priests, the religion is corrupt. It's all about protecting the power among the few at the expense of everybody else. That's the problem they're running into here. In fact, verse 14, they have wandered as blind men in the streets. They have polluted themselves with blood so that men could not touch their garments. So when you think about this, they are, so let's actually move on to verse 15. Sorry, let's add on to this. So they cried unto them, depart ye, it is unclean. Depart, depart, touch not. When they fled away and wandered, they said among the heathen, they shall no more sojourn there. So think of like, the poor people are infected. They're sick. They're bad. We have to stay away from them. They're poor. Don't mess with them. You kind of see these scenes if you watch the play Les Mis, or the movie of Les Mis, Les Miserables, I should say at the end there. That the whole point of that play is understanding that the rich were dominating and occupying, and the poor were getting worse, and the poor revolted. If you see the scene when the poor start clamoring all over the carriages of the wealthy are holding up a thing to smell, so they can't smell the feces and the dirt and the nastiness of the poor. They're not trying to help the poor. They're trying to preserve their wealth in a time of need instead of giving their wealth to help others out. So that's kind of the same idea, basically. They're not helping each other. So verse 16, the anger of the Lord hath divided them. He will no more regard them. They respected not the persons of the priests. They favored not the elders. As for us, our eyes as yet failed for our vain help. In our watching, we have watched for a nation that could not save us. They hunt our steps. We cannot go in our streets. Our end is near. Our days are fulfilled. Our end is come. The people, the society is broken down. It's bad. And there's nobody coming to help them. No friends. Nobody's helping them out. Verse 19, our persecutors are swifter than the eagles of heaven. They pursued us upon the mountains. They laid wait for us in the wilderness. The breath of our nostrils, the anointed of the Lord, was taken in their pits, of whom we said, under his shadow we shall live among the heathen. So this is an interesting idea to think about here in verse 20. Basically, why did we ever trust King Zedekiah? They're like, why did we trust him? Why did we go along with him? He was a terrible king. He's part of the reason why we're in this. Why did we follow his plan of trying to partner with Egypt and get away from Babylon? Man, that was a bad move. We should have listened to Jeremiah. He had the right idea. Verse 21, rejoice and be glad, O daughter of Edom, that dwellest in the land of Uz. The cup also shall pass through unto thee. Thou shalt be drunken, and shalt make thyself naked. Now Edom, at the time of Jerusalem's capture, now they had sought to enrich herself through Judah's tragedy. So Edom, which was distant cousins, basically, of, if I remember, that was Esau's descendancy. So Jacob's other brother Esau, okay, so a distant cousin. They saw this opportunity. We hate Jerusalem. They're destroyed. We now have a chance of sneaking in and taking whatever Babylon hasn't taken and exploit this and get back, basically. So the Old Testament study manual talked about this. If you compare Obadiah chapter 1, he's one of the minor prophets we're going to get into here in a little bit. And her actions at that time were bitterly resented by the Jews. But the Jews could console themselves with the thought that whereas their own punishment was now accomplished, that of Edom was still to come. The cup also shall pass through unto thee. So even though Jerusalem's looking at Edom, and Edom's like, ha ha, you're being destroyed, you're an idiot, they're going, oh, Edom, it's coming to you next. Karma's coming back. And sure enough, it does, as Jeremiah prophesied towards the end of his book. 22, the punishment of thine iniquity is accomplished, O daughter of Zion. He will no more carry thee away into captivity. He will visit thine iniquity, O daughter of Edom. He will discover thy sins. Edom is in a bad spot too. They've hated Jerusalem and Judah, and now they're going to be destroyed as well. So let's jump over to the next chapter as we continue to understand these poems of Jeremiah in the book of Lamentations.